Penguin Random House Audio presents The Happiness Cure. Why You're Not Built for Constant Happiness and How to Enjoy the Journey by Dr. Anders Hansen. Read for you by Dr. Anders Hansen and Nikolas Salmon.
This book looks at why, even when we have things so good, so many people seem to be struggling with their mental health. It deals with milder forms of depression and anxiety, but not bipolar disorder or schizophrenia. There are two reasons for this. First and foremost, bipolar disorder and schizophrenia are far too complex to explore within the scope of a single popular science book. Secondly, the mental health problems that appear to be on the rise in today's society tend to be milder forms of mental illness. Schizophrenia and severe forms of bipolar disorder are not on the rise, and therefore the arguments highlighted here are not applicable to them. In this book, I present a biological way of viewing our mental and physical health that I know from experience many people find helpful. If you're feeling down, seek help, as there is help available. And if you're taking any medication for a psychiatric condition, always consult your doctor first before making any changes. Introduction. Why do we feel so bad when we have it so good? You will probably feel down from time to time. Perhaps you suffer from mild anxiety, or occasionally find yourself struck by utter, debilitating panic. Perhaps at one point in your life, things felt so bleak that you could hardly get yourself out of bed. Come to think of it, this is all a little strange, as between our ears, we hold a biological marvel so advanced it should be able to cope with, well, anything. Your ever-changing, remarkably dynamic brain consists of 86 billion cells with at least 100 trillion connections. These create intricate networks that govern all of the body's organs, all while processing, interpreting, and prioritizing an endless stream of sensory impressions. Your brain can store the information equivalent of 11,000 libraries packed full of books. That's how much your memory can actually hold. And yet, within a fraction of a second, it can pull up the most relevant information, even if decades have passed since it was stored, and relate that to what you're currently experiencing. So if your brain can do all of this, why can't it manage a simple task like making you feel fantastic all the time? Why must it insist on putting a spanner in your emotional works? This riddle is made all the more cryptic when we consider that we are living in an age of unparalleled abundance that would knock the socks off pretty much any king, queen, emperor, and pharaoh in history. We are living longer, healthier lives than ever before, and should we ever find ourselves the slightest bit bored, the planet's collective knowledge and entertainment are never more than a few taps away. Still, even though we never had it so good, many of us appear to be struggling. Hardly a day goes by without an alarming report on the rise in mental health problems. In Sweden, 1 in 8 adults is taking antidepressants. The World Health Organization estimates that 284 million people in the world have an anxiety disorder, while 280 million suffer from depression. It is feared that within a matter of years, depression will generate a greater global burden of disease than any other illness. So why then do we feel so bad when we have it so good? This is a question that has nagged me throughout my career. Do 284 million people have a sickness in their brain? Are 1 in 8 adults lacking in certain neurotransmitters? It was only when I realized that we can't simply work from where we are today, but must also take stock of where we have been, that a new way of thinking came to me. An approach that does not only give us a deeper understanding of our emotional lives, but also opens up new ways to improve them. I believe that the answer to why we feel so bad when we have it so good is that we have forgotten that we are biological beings. That is why in this book we will be looking at our emotional life and well-being from a neurobiological perspective, exploring why the brain works the way it does. Having worked with thousands of patients, I have seen firsthand how valuable this knowledge can be. It gives us a deeper insight into what we need to prioritize to feel as good as we can. It also helps us to understand ourselves better, which in turn makes us kinder to ourselves. First up, we're going to look at what happens in our brains when we experience common mental health problems, depression and anxiety, and why this can sometimes be a sign of health as opposed to sickness. We will then turn our attention to what we can do to manage these problems. After that, we will explore whether we really do feel worse than we did before, and how a biological outlook on our emotional lives can change this. Finally, we will try to pinpoint what it is that makes us happy. But let's start from the beginning. Literally.
Chapter 1. We are the survivors. Extinction is the rule. Survival is the exception. Carl Sagan. Let's wind the clock back some 250,000 years and transport ourselves to East Africa. Here we meet a woman who we'll call Eve. Eve looks like you and me, and she lives with 100 or so other people who spend their days gathering food in the form of edible plants and hunting wild animals. Eve has had 7 children, but 4 of them have died. One son died during birth, a daughter from a severe infection, another daughter from a fall, and a teenage son from being drawn into a conflict and killed. 3 of Eve's children did, however, reach adulthood, and they have a total of 8 children. Of these, 4 will reach adulthood, and they, in turn, will have their own children. Repeat this over 10,000 generations, and you will find Eve's great, etc. grandchildren. And who are they? Well, you and me. We are the descendants of the few who didn't die in childbirth, whose infections managed to heal, and who avoided bleeding out from wounds, succumbing to starvation, getting murdered, or being mauled to death by a predator. You and I are the latest links in an unbroken chain of the people who were left standing after the smoke of the battlefield, infectious diseases, and disastrous famines had passed. When we think about it, it's obvious that none of your forefathers or foremothers could have died before bringing a child into this world. But this has consequences that are far less obvious. Those of Eve's descendants who reacted keenly to dangers and were particularly wary about that rustling in the bushes, which could have been a lion, had better odds of survival. And because you and I are descended from these survivors, we too have a heightened alertness to danger. Similarly, those of our ancestors who had a strong immune system had a greater chance of surviving an infectious disease, which is why most of us have excellent immune systems, even if it doesn't always feel that way come February. One further consequence of all this relates to our psychological traits. You see, those of Eve's descendants who had mental qualities that helped them to survive had a greater chance of doing just that. And as a result, you and I still bear those very same qualities. That we have an unbroken chain of survivors behind us, and that not one of them was killed by a lion, stumbled off the edge of a cliff, or starved before they could procreate, should make us superhuman. We should be as smart as 2-time Nobel Prize winner Marie Curie, as wise as spiritual leader Mahatma Gandhi, and as cool as Jack Bauer in the TV series 24. But are we really all that? The fittest. The expression survival.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?